Hey, Inspired Tribe, my fellow freedom lovers. I'm Jean Nolan, and we're back with an inspired conversation. This man does not need an introduction on the Inspired channel. You know him by now. He's been on many, many times. And we are returning because the Guardians of the Looking Glass, this mysterious group, has just released a new video. Frank Jacob, thank you so much for joining us again today.
Great to be here, John, as always. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you, Frank. We're kind of on a hotline, you and I, communicating. The video came out. We should talk about it. And this has been our premise from the get-go. And this disclaimer always comes at the beginning of our conversations. We're not supporters of the Guardians. We're not fanboys. We're not trying to promote what they're saying. We're discussing what they're saying and the thoughts and the bigger pictures that it triggers what they're saying. I think this is important. For those of you who haven't seen our previous conversations, we will put a link to the playlist with the videos up here and down there. And now, Frank, please take it away. What's this new message about? What is your take on it? And what is your current perception of the Guardians of the Looking Glass?
I never thought they were going to come up with a video this fast. And so I woke up this morning and drinking my coffee and messages started coming in, like including yours. I think it dropped like at 2:00 in the morning, my time. So it was fun. It was fun to read a new video. And I think that my feeling on the message is, again, just like the previous one, it's very logical. Like what they're saying is reaching back to the essence of any kind of overthrow of a tyranny or anything in the world is always done by the people getting together. And what they're talking about in this video is essentially, on the one hand, revealing something, and on the other hand, a way to reveal it the most effective way that it has its effect. So those are the prime things that I got out of it. But you were saying also earlier that it's an interesting timing, because we all have heard, or not all, but many people have heard, that there's been a return of the Q phenomenon. So, interesting, right?
Yeah, we'll talk about that. I need to hear your perspective. I won't chime in for now.
Well, and what we can do is, if you want, we can go through the text. I've got a few screenshots. We'll just work our way through it, and then we'll get that out of the way, and then we'll open up the discussion to some other territory. So essentially, what we got here is, on the left, you see they now have 2 videos populating their channels again, and it's the mother of all titles, right? The most important intel released in human history. Yeah, okay, let's hear the intel, right? So essentially, they start off by saying, it's time for an important update. As you know, we spoke about an evil plan that we are aware of in our last video. And we also discussed how CERN has had an impact on the timelines we're facing. Many of us felt despondent and hopeless, and that nothing could be done to stop what is coming. That has changed. Okay, so this is going to be interesting, right? It is not because anything we did. It's because brave people outside of us trusted that our guardians, that's you or us, could help them in a very important way. For the past month, we've been working with 2 groups of patriots who plan to release newly discovered information. They contacted us and asked us for help. These patriot groups do not have a wide audience or prominent social media accounts. Okay, what's interesting about this to me is that I remember when I was sort of perusing the Raindrop DAO page, there was a lot of sort of background chatter that they've been working with some people and some groups. So it's like consistent with that, at least. But what's also interesting is that the word patriot has surfaced.
Yes.
Yeah, and they've never used that before. We've always just been guardians. Now there's patriot groups, and we all know that patriot groups have a certain, unfortunately, a certain stigma because of the way they've been slanted and bent, even though the word patriot is probably the most powerful word in the sense of nationhood, because true patriots are those people who protect the nation, who stand on guard for the nation. That's the real meaning of patriots. So it shouldn't be a dirty word. At least not, we shouldn't be looking at it that way, even if the people on the left or whatever, the liberals, are looking at it that way. Okay, and they continue on. Instead, this group, they operate in the shadows behind the scenes. They're comprised of many ex-military and ex-government intelligence officials who came together over the years out of concern that the U.S. government had been compromised and no longer operated according to the law or constitution. Some members of the Patriot groups personally knew some of the individuals who belonged to our group, so there's already a level of trust that we shared. We examined the information that they brought to us. We then verified it with our own sources. We determined without any doubt or question the information is legitimate and of great importance. The information is of the highest worldwide secrecy. It is the closest guarded secret of the negative forces. Very, very potent words there.
I'm glad they weren't using her hyperbole at all.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, it's, the closest guarded secret of the negative forces. Okay. I mean, a lot of things come to my mind when I hear what that could be. Okay, but let's just continue on. The information was first discovered by accident by a group of white hat hackers who were working for a European government agency. They were very concerned with what they had found. They are bound to secrecy under threat of penalty of lifetime imprisonment or death. We know that's to be true for people that work in the inside on those kinds of levels. To release this information would require many steps, a great deal of courage, and the ability to the ability to find the right people to help them through a series of events. And this is where they get down to the nitty-gritty of how they're going to do it. They made contact with various whistleblower groups, which led them to the Patriot groups we are now working with. And the Patriot groups offered assurances to the white hat hackers that the information would be released properly without censorship and with great protections offered to keep their identities secret. After many negotiations, the white hat hackers agreed to begin working with these groups for a plan to release the information. Okay, so, I mean, essentially all of this makes sense. Yeah, I mean, these people do have secrecy oaths that they have to sign before they get into any of these groups. And I think a very important element is the idea of getting information out unfiltered, because, even WikiLeaks was filtered. I mean, in the end, they always tabled it to people to do, kind of responsible journalism, as they called it, and which put a filter on it right away. So, what we're talking about, I think what all of us are kind of hoping for is raw data. We don't want a filter. We want the real stuff to be put out there, unvarnished, right? Okay, so we'll continue on. The Patriot groups felt our people, our guardians, could be the best people to help get this information out, and we agreed with that. We then formulated a careful plan to release it. The information is of such critical nature that we must release it in the most effective way possible. We've been told if we release it, or if the Patriot groups release it, it could cause a worldwide internet shutdown. This is so that teams of professionals working for the negative forces can quickly remove it. Now, this is something that isn't strange either, okay? The shutdown would be similar to an internet outage that took place, in which Facebook was down for a period of time in 2021. I think we can all remember that. And then a cover story was quickly released, and this occurred because a similar release of information happened back then, and it was quickly censored. We not only believe the negative forces would shut down the internet if certain information got out, we know they have done it before and they have the capability to do it. Totally legitimate. All of it's viable up to now. And I think, the whole idea of Facebook being used at one point for dissemination of information may seem logical too, and might also be part of the reason, although there's other reasons we know too, but part of the reason that Facebook has become this just unbelievable sledgehammer of censorship in the last, 18 to 25 months. Yeah. Okay, we'll continue on. This is why a mass release across many channels and networks must be done all at once at the same time, so that censoring would be near impossible or very difficult. The Facebook breach was not done this way. It was done via a series of posts which were quickly deleted, and the whistleblowers were quickly identified. The threat was terminated by the negative forces. We must act in the most deliberate, careful, intentional way to ensure that what we release cannot be stopped, shut down, or censored. We have now received hundreds of emails from Guardians at our new email address. We believe those of you who wrote us are prepared to act when they're called upon. Soon you will receive an email from us with instructions. Okay, so now it's obviously the plan is being sort of dripped out. Our emails seem to have served a purpose. The question is, did they know before they were going this way, or didn't they know before? Is it just a nice coincidence? But in the end, it's still true. The only way you can get something out there is if you spread it across, like it's the same equivalent to open source technology being put out there to many different developers at the same time. It speeds up the pace, and you can't put it back in the bottle once the genie's out.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's carry on. It will contain links to videos that will be posted online by the Patriot groups we are working with. You must act to share those videos across as many social media accounts as possible. You must also copy those videos, save them to your hard drive, and re-upload them to different channels in case the original source videos are deleted. Logo, really. We also believe Telegram is a critically important source of truth, free from most censorship. It will act as an important conduit when the information is released. Okay, we'll see. I mean, a lot of people that I know, and you too, we also use Telegram because of that reason. Mm-hmm. But in the back of our minds, we all know that even these platforms are not 100%, which is probably why they say free from most censorship. There'll probably be a certain amount of time where it'll get out on Telegram, and then even Telegram will fall. I mean, they're all going to fall, right? What will be released will be an interview with an individual who is acting as the liaison between the white hat hackers and the Patriot groups. This individual has an extensive background in counter-surveillance and espionage and an intricate knowledge of the negative forces' coming plans. This individual will communicate everything provided from the white hat hackers. The video may also include screenshots and documentaries detailing what has been discovered. Additional videos will also be released later on. We cannot disclose at this time the exact nature of what will be revealed. What we can say is it involves an event that is to take place sometime in the near future. Our best information is that this event could occur in as early as 6 months from now and no later than the year 2025. We do not believe the event can be changed or stopped, as so much work has been gone into its plan. What we do believe is that there is another way for us to challenge what is going to happen. We have a plan of our own, one that will be carefully revealed when the time is right. It is a plan that can only work if we, the Patriot groups, and our guardians work together. You will receive an email from us sometime in the month of July. All right, so we got to look out for that coming days, coming weeks, as we prepare for this disclosure. We will post a video on our channel shortly after the emails are sent so that you can be aware and ready to take action. We want to thank the Patriot groups for contacting us and thank the White Hat hackers who are risking their lives. They both believe the Guardians, those who email us, will be the key to getting this information out to the world. They believe in you. We told them they made a good decision. We also warned them that there are agents and agitators who will try to attack and discredit us. First, they will try to censor the information. If that doesn't work, they'll try to block or ignore the information so that it remains circulating with a small group of people. And if that doesn't work, and if the information becomes more widespread, this is when they will use paid agents and agitators to try to discredit it. The campaign to discredit and attack will intensify if the information continues to spread to a wider audience. And this is how they operate step by step. So we are prepared for their response. That's essentially the nutshell of it.
Well,
what do you say to that?
I have a few thoughts on that. And before I go into the nitty gritty stuff that's in there that I see, there are some inconsistencies that to me stick out from the first video to go in here. First, it was multiple events over the course of the next years. And there seemed to have to been a path that was walkable for them to go down this route. Okay, we prevent one event, we prevent two events. Now, for whatever reason, then they steered away. Then we heard about amulets, and then we heard about Jesus and Muhammad and the Grail, and sort of a almost gimmicky, video gamey kind of language, which a lot of people, right? So then back to hardcore, let's go and now Patriots. And now what also sticks out to me is they came out as being the Guardians. Now they call the viewers or the people the Guardians. So to me, there's inconsistency in messaging, but let's say these are not professional PR people and they kind of haven't thought that part really through. the interesting, the important part is still that what they're conveying, whether they're giving it in the mystical terms that they use or not, is really reflecting what we're observing anyways. We are observing this, starting with COVID, this huge new era. We knew, you put two and two together, this is not the last event. That they're gearing and ramping up for something bigger, for something stronger, because they still have an agenda, and we talked about it. So that all makes sense. What I can't make any sense of is what the real aim of this group is, which I don't even know if they are the guardians of the people watching are the guardians. So there's confusion in messaging for me, and I can't seem to find a thread that would allow for people to actually really jump on board. And maybe that's good. Maybe that's actually a good thing, because jumping on someone else's bandwagon might not be the right thing to do anyways. So that's kind of my one part of it. The second part is the Q thing, which I want to get into a little later. But what's your overall take?
Well, on the one hand, like the languaging part that you just mentioned, I see that too. But if they are military people, they're not the slickest when it comes to wording. And they may be, so we have to give them that benefit of the doubt that they're just kind of they're surfing the situation. And when they came out in the very beginning, the April 18th event was pretty much like, one of these huge events that was going to impact everything from that point forward. And it's changed because of all of our involvement, our focus on the idea that there's timelines in play here, and that we have to think about what timeline we want to manifest, has thrown us into a different trajectory, one that nobody could really predict. And so, if it seems to you like they're rudderless, it might have to do with the fact that they've just kind of, this whole looking glass data is no longer applicable, or at least if they haven't got active data or dynamic data, then all of what they have may be completely obsolete at this point. Sure. Or maybe just traces of it are still around, because like they mentioned CERN, and CERN is I've got some information about CERN. It's just that they are really, that is the key here. The CERN thing is key, and it's just what we found out is just from people that are on the inside. I'm not allowed to mention their names. In fact, I was going to try to get their names and try to tell more of a story. Maybe we can expand on that, in another chapter. Mm-hmm. But what I found out from somebody who was invited there very recently, who is, a high-level industrial person. I won't get into specifics. Let me think. Careful wording here. But essentially, he was brought into the inside because of materials needed there that he'd be able to supply. So he got a very, very close look at what's going on, and he got some information that shocked him to the bone. And it has to do with the idea that we know they've been using CERN to play with time. And, on some of the other shows that we did together, we showed some of those slides, some of those articles, some of the researchers that were bragging about creating, time portals, time loops, and things like that at CERN. But what's emerged from this recent data is that people are always wondering, why is there a 27 kilometer
not radius,
accelerator, right? So there's this round 27 kilometer in circumference accelerator. And it turns out that what was found out was that the technology that's built there is very, very similar to the same technology which was harvested from the Roswell crash era crashes onward, which we've talked about early on, about how Looking Glass was revealed from the actual interaction with the J-rods that were the pilots of these craft that began crashing in the 40s. Mm-hmm. And that led to the Orion Cube, some other technologies that were installed on their ships. Well, and we even talked about how the Looking Glass has incarnations which are room size with cameras set up so you can film and like a holographic projection of what's going on. But that in Abu Dhabi, there's artificial stargates that have been created because these things need to operate near stargates, either natural stargates, which there are, artificial stargates. And the ones that are in Abu Dhabi, for example, are tapping into artificially made stargates, and they're much larger. In other words, they're large enough to move larger objects through, and either people or maybe even a craft, right? Well, the CERN itself, the entire 27 kilometers, the diameter of that is the size of the portal of the looking glass that they've got fired up down there, my friend. And here, look at this. You got to look at this article. They just published this on their own website. Oops. I'll go to the right slide. It's Big Bang Day coming up. July 4th, right? July 4th is.
But yeah, let me stop you here. This is interesting. CERN's in Switzerland. It's
right.
not so 4th of July is Independence Day in America, very significant. Why this is in a bigger picture is the significance of event in American politics, culture, and jurisprudence right now are just off the hook with everything that's happening. So this, to me, has greater significance that they picked July 4th right now at this time.
Oh my God! Just when you said that, I just had like goosebumps because before we started recording today, you were saying that there's been historic moments in the United States this last few days, right? And
yeah.
True, like what does CERN have to do with the United States and Big Bang, like July 4th, right? It's
somebody's sticking their finger in our faces.
Somebody's playing with us, right? So
yeah.
We know. So basically, the thing I found out from one other detail that I'll add about the LHC is that they used these colliders to make to generate huge magnetic fields, apparently, right? To try and emulate the Big Bang, right? the Big Bang. But essentially the big electronic field, like they're using 14 tera electron volt energy fields. I found out now, essentially to contain the black hole that they're going to open inside that huge space that they've created. So in other words, if they can't contain that field, it's going to swallow everything in it. Could swallow the entire planet into it, for all I know. They could create these rifts. Remember some of those shots that that I showed you with that weird looking straight line directly beside the sun, that anomaly? That looks like a rift in space time. And so
we've seen some of those footages over the past months more and more, as I'm sure they're ramping up testing, trying out on a smaller scale. But again, to me, I'm trying to connect the dots here, because I said,
okay, well, let me go back to, because you asked me the question, what does this have to do with, like, what are the Guardians, like, where are they going with this, right?
Exactly.
So they mentioned CERN. I think CERN is the most important thing, actually, that they brought up, because that, to me, gives me the clue that, which is my theory, was that they've just been, they don't know where it's going at this moment. And, because the timeline has been altered, and the people in charge of running those projects there are rapidly trying to create new dimensions. And so anybody who's not on the inside, or anybody who's using looking glass data, which is just, a data set that was recorded and stashed and is not working with it dynamically, no longer has access to that information. And so, what they're moving in the direction of, to me, the idea of moving into and bringing in this Patriot angle, there's a lot of other, I don't want to say battles to be fought, it's kind of negative, but there's a lot of other territory that's like, there's a lot of things going on right now that are impacting our freedom. And Roe versus Wade was one loss or victory, depending on what side of the fence you were sitting on. But all of it is pointing back to the idea that it's up to us to do something now. And so I think we have to kind of take the ball in our own hands here, because if it's true that the Guardians, who are now we're the Guardians, all of us, or they don't even call themselves Guardians anymore, they've pushed the ball to us. They said, all right, here you go, guys, you're the Guardians, go for it, right?
I think you did that, Frank. You came out and said, we hijacked this conversation. That's right, what you did.
Fault.
A few conversations ago.
It's true. It's my fault.
I want to go back and see if that's when they started actually referring to the people as the Guardians, because that's what happened.
It's true. It's true. You can't deny that. I mean, you can look at the timeline. It's always good looking in reverse.
No pun intended, right?
Yeah, no pun intended. But yeah, it's like you absolutely can see that development. And so, this is for me essentially what it's all coming down to. And what I've said from the very start, I think we need to be the ones that hijack that narrative and take our power back, our complete, like we have to realize who we are. And
that's the most important thing.
And that's probably why they're doing whatever they can to stop us. I mean, look, we showed this diagram last time, or not diagram, this is like readings of what's happening when CERN is hitting the Schumann, whenever they activate it. And you can see on those red arrows, you can see how basically that's where they started it. And this is where the Schumann measuring devices went off the scale. In other words, their amplitude was so hot, they couldn't pick up any signal. And what many people are erroneously calling, they shot it, even Alex Collier. I mean, it's like, we have no idea what's going on, but hey, they're up to 7,000 hertz. No, they're distorting the Schumann the pickup of the Schumann resonance is distorting because they just can't deal with the level of energy being infused into the Schumann resonances. Yeah. So, and that is directly affecting our brains because of the 8 hertz. Because we've talked about that. It's just, we are tapped into the earth, as people always call it Mother Earth and Gaia and things. But there is something to the fact that we resonate. We're organic beings that are resonating with an organic greater extension, Mother Earth, and the Schumann frequencies are like unto the earth and the lightnings as our neurons firing inside our brain. You can almost calculate it down to exact ratios. Michael Persinger talked about that in Solar Revolution in our film. The actual, picotesla measurements, as he would call it, that are involved are exact replicas of the macro micro scale between our brains, our neurons, and the earth. So it's clear to me that CERN, on the one hand, is being used to open these portals to other dimensions for them to manipulate the timelines. And the other aspect is to block us from feeling empowered. Because when you're feeling tired or you got a headache, some of the most powerful healers and some of the most sensitive people out there now on the planet are the first ones to go down when they because they're the ones that are tapped into this greater, finer element out there. Most people are like, their pineal glands have become so blocked with fluoride and calcium that they don't pick up things anyway, And the key is to clear our pineal gland and to tap into those things, to open up our greater awareness, to know who we really are. So these things are happening, and we have to realize that, the guardians, maybe this is why you titled the last one, "Is this their last message?" Because, maybe they're gone, maybe they've really passed it on. But if it now moves into the Q thing again, I'm going to be very interested to see what their next move is going to be, or what actually they're going to reveal. We're all burning to see what these videos and documents and everything they're going to reveal to us is going to be all about, right? And I'm sure you and I are both critical enough to kind of shred it if it's sounding like BS. But at the same time, if it's real, I mean, man, we're going to get it out there, aren't we? It's like, of course.
Well, naturally, but I feel at this point, we also have an obligation. I think if you start something, you got to also see it through. And we've started, as far as I know, as the first people discussing this on a broader spectrum. And to me, it's important because I don't care what the movement is. I don't want people to be kind of non-critically sucked in. And of course, that's a personal responsibility for everyone. But, there's so much information out there. And the idea here is to discern. And the idea here is to bring the power back, right? And why I want to quickly tie this into the recent decision by the Supreme Court of the United States, which I honestly at some point thought is probably completely corrupted. And the Q thing. So I think this decision, and abortion is probably the most controversial subject in the United States. It is like, it's been a hot button issue for 50 years. But this decision really said something that isn't directly tied to the subject matter. It's tied to the principles on which this nation was founded on, to the Constitution, which was actually inspired heavily by the Native Americans, especially the separation of powers and who has what decisions. And so the states now, what this decision really said is, this is not a federal issue. This is not something that the Constitution defined as being in federal power. It's actually a state issue. And so what the beautiful thing about this is it brings it closer to the people again, because the most distant form of government is the centralized federalized government in DC. This is the furthest removed from the people. It's the most difficult to change anything there. The closer it comes to the people, states, counties, cities, villages, that's the most direct form of government you have. So that's why it's always important to bring the important decisions back to that level. At least that's how I see it. It's kind of like, okay, we're bringing it closer to the tribe. That's why I think this is a highly, highly wonderful, wonderful decision. Aside from just being someone who loves life and wants to celebrate and protect it at all costs. That's it. But the Q phenomenon now moving in with this current Guardian's newest video, that to me is the biggest connection here. Because Q was all about patriotism, was all about instilling this in people, getting people to research. But Q was saying, trust a plan. Yes, do your research, trust a plan, which was always a critical point, right? But now you have the Guardians, which don't say trust a plan. The Guardians kind of say, or these people say, you are the plan. And that's maybe why I resonate with this message more, because it puts us in a more active spot.
Right.
The goalpost moving of we're going to send and we're going to release and we're going to answer, but we didn't answer the emails kind of is a little annoying. But then again, we run a fairly small organization here, but it is nonetheless an organization. You know what a movie project is, and you know how sometimes you cannot live up to the plan that you had in the beginning. It moves, it gets bigger than you ever thought it could be. So many factors come in. Do you think that's part of the reason why we see kind of a little bit of moving of the goalpost and why we see a little bit of incoherence in the messaging?
Yeah, I would have to agree with that. I think that, life is dynamic, and these are obviously big issues, right? What do they call this? The biggest, leak in humanity, or do you have it on your screen? It's like, it's just, they essentially are trying to wrestle topics that are existential. They haven't taken on even Roe versus Wade is a small issue in the great, bigger picture. Now it is tied into the idea of sovereignty and bringing things up, but the Guardians have brought in themselves into territory that is epic in proportion, because it is nothing less than the survival of the natural organic human being versus the entrance of a bionic robot ultimately, and the eventual extinction of what we now have all around us that we take for granted. And then the aspect of timelines and the aspect of technology like Looking Glass and a timeline war in the middle of all this, it's only to be expected. Yeah. And I think that what we have to think about here is perseverance and patience, because I've noticed that a lot of people are jumping around, like flip-flopping around, and you kind of got to be rock solid with this stuff, because it isn't easy. It's like not for people that have thin skin. It's just, these are things that come in. You want to have an immediate answer. You can't always get the immediate answer. And I've noticed a lot of people are approaching me with videos and links to channelers. Yeah. And, which is why I think we should talk about this subject. Yeah, this is something that
close to home, very close to home for us. Yeah,
it's very close to home, because basically people are, they're going to channels. And we've brought in stuff on these episodes that we do. We've brought in interdimensional messages because I was working on this show called Possible Futures, which we did our last episode this morning. In fact, there's a couple of messages that I think I'm going to pull out. It was all German, so I've translated a couple of them, and I'm going to show them because it's important. But the idea is, like, even channelers that are not bringing stuff, that are bringing stuff in, from where are they bringing it in? A lot of the things that I was talking to you about that I brought in were things that come through Faraday cages, where there's no possible way a signal could come in, or beings that had never been incarnated as humans. So whenever there's a human being involved, it's a filter. And a lot of these channels out there have to be honest with themselves and look at what the information is that they're tapping into as just that. It's extra information, but it's never going to be 100% accurate. In fact, it's drawing from the same field that we draw from. We're connected, the Burkhardt-Heim formulas that I was talking about in the webinar, like basically these 12 dimensions, and that we exist within these dimensions in our consciousness at a certain level. And we draw upon information fields that are outside of these dimensions, and our DNA and the way we're wired and with the 8 hertz and our pineal gland, these are all mechanisms which were given in the biological machine that we're moving around in to be able to access that information. But at the same time, we also feed that field. So it's not just a one-way street. So if we're feeding that field based on misinformation, and which is one of the biggest beefs I have with a lot of information, even in the new age or the disclosure scene, people are drawing on historical information, which is fake, false, and they're pulling it in and saying, and then the loop starts, right? They've been misinformed, fake history, right? And that builds the foundation of their value system and their morality and their moral code and their judgments. And then they when they get older, we all get older, we start getting more complex. We're feeding the field and we're getting it back. So we're resonating with this field, and some of the information is going to be based on these falsehoods. So we can never 100% be sure that what we're getting from channeled information is something we can rely on. In fact, I think out of the 3 or 4 supposed high-level channels that I was given information and tied into, 75% of them are way off, and 25% have a couple of nuggets that might be true, but so like then you're at that 80-20 thing, right? 80-20. It's worse to have 80 truth, 20 fake than I'd rather just have all fake, or because that's where it's dangerous. Like, what part is true and what part isn't true?
Well, that's that's the recipe for disinformation. Throw in some truth, throw in some half truth, and throw in some lies. But if I have the perspective as someone who's channeled for 12, I don't know how many years now. And one thing that always amazes me, the people I know and that I was maybe initiated me into this work, if you will. And I've with great respect, I've had thousands of conversations before I even opened it up to the public and make it accessible to others. That's because I understood a few things. Number one is, if I am not in a very, very balanced state myself, right? As balanced as I can be. So there's number one, how it's going to get tainted. Because when I swing either way, it's going to go and going to get colored by my own consciousness, by my own perception. So balance is a number one thing for me. Number two is that I perceived it always as a download of information, but not in terms of words really, but of feelings, consciousness, and concepts that then my current human consciousness translates into words that might be understandable. So there's bound to be a disconnect, because this information is actually nonverbal when it comes through, and my brain, however it operates, makes it verbal. So it's bound to have a disconnect, because telepathy will give you the closest one-on-one conversation. As soon as we use words, there's a disconnect. And then the third thing is, which puzzles me, is, and all the communication I've had with other channelers, is that information that gives whoever listens to the message clear instructions on what to do, when to do it, where to go, or like that has never happened to me. Although, man, we've had times in our lives where we would have loved nothing more than when, for them to tell us, do this, do that, go there, call this person, everything's going to be fine. It always just, they conveyed concepts, they conveyed greater wisdom, principles, universal laws in a million different ways so we could understand it. But basically what the message always is, now it's up to you. It's up to you. Here's the principle. Here's how it works. Apply it or don't. That's going to be up to you. And this has been my personal experience with channeling. So when I hear all these messages from various different groups, I'm very skeptical, because it doesn't resonate with me when someone else tries to tell me what to do.
Well, absolutely right. And I think this has always been something of particular interest to me, is that people that are claiming things when they are certain, and especially in channelers and people, or even whistleblowers and things, they're certain. Like, no, you can't be certain ever, and you have to be honest with yourself. And so, and here I'll show you the thing that I thought was amazing, because this is what we put up on the screen in our German show, Possible Futures. This is the Cassiopeans again. We've been sort of digging into these entities coming from the Cassiopean constellation. They communicated, and this resonates with me, what you just said, that you waited a long time before you kind of came out with, trusting or going deeper into the information. The people that were working with the Cassiopeans took 2 years before they ever came out, and the partner of the woman who was bringing this through was very, very skeptical and took a very scientific approach. But this is an interesting message that came out from them. They're saying, do not give up. The Cassiopeans, they noticed when they were working with them, they do not give out their knowledge just like that. As I've noted again and again, they give us signposts, but not maps, right? Their point about it is that if we don't do anything about it, in other words, make an effort ourselves to gather the detailed knowledge, then it's useless, like candy, empty calories, right? This claim is clearly aimed at making the practice of channeling unnecessary and obsolete. We will, eventually, they will. They repeatedly said that leading us by the hand was harmful. They gave us the background, the acceleration, because we asked repeatedly, regularly, and with dedication for more than 2 years before contact was made. But the real purpose is that we learn to walk by ourselves.
Yes.
Right? And then they say, we're trying to tell you something important, and you keep asking questions. Now, please be silent for a moment, right? Now, when have you ever heard that being said by a channel, right? We've told you many times that you should communicate, collaborate, and share ideas with others, because that is how you learn and develop. But now you're starting to rely on us for all the answers. That's not how you learn, right? So, I mean, I love that, right? Because that's it. That's it in a nutshell. That's channeling. Channeling is like another information source, but you have to sync it up with everything else going on, and to determine whether it has any validity. And so many people rely on this channeling stuff, and so many channels are out there saying, "Oh, the dark forces they've lost. It's gone." And they've left the planet. It's already over, and it's just a cleanup crew now, right? But I'm still seeing the main players in the leading roles, on the power positions, in the field, throwing hoops. And no one's, it's people are working like we are to try and stop them, but we're working on it from a total opposite scale. We're working on it from this divine aspect of humanity, that we actually, through knowing who we really are, can change things. And I think we can't say it enough. It's because people have learned to put their idols on pedestals, right?
Yes.
And and that's another thing that I came across just the other day, which I wanted to share. It's this pedestalization of Jesus, right? Putting Jesus on a pedestal. And I put it beside it a book that actually influenced me when I was a teenager, called "If You Meet the Buddha on the Road, Kill Him." And basically it's saying, the truth, the way, the meaning, your own meaning in your life comes from within yourself. It doesn't come from outside of yourself. And, if anyone claims that they have the truth or outside of yourself, they're, just run, they don't, it's about this reaching and learning about who you really are. Right. And so the whole thing about Jesus, came up because I found something that was talking about how the 10th chapter of St. John, verse 30, Jesus says, "I and the Father are one." And the people around him immediately pick up stones to stone him. And he replies, "Isn't it written in your law? And I've said you are gods." He's quoting the 82nd Psalm, right? Which is basically written in the law, that it's like we are gods, right? And essentially, he says in there, it says, "I am a son of God." A son of God
is very different than the Son of God.
Different than the Son of God, right? And the King James Version of the Bible has the Son of God. But if you look at it, you see preceding those words, it's in italics. And people think that means emphasis. But it doesn't. It means interpolation. They weren't sure of the definition. It could be either one. So they put it in italics. If you go to the Greek translation, there's no italics. It's a Son of God. Now imagine if the church hadn't hijacked that conversation. See, this is my beef with the church. I think religion in and of itself is okay to help teach people morality and higher standards of thinking. But when a church becomes a power structure in itself and hijacks the conversation of the messages that it's trying to convey, I think when I was a teenager, it was reincarnation was taken out of the Council of Nicaea or something. Yeah. But now it's like you're looking at this. This is a key message right here. That when Jesus said, "I am the way, and no man comes to the Father but by me," he's saying it's the divine in all of us. It's this divinity, this aspect of our divinity. And if we'd been told from the very start from the church that, hey, it's not the Son of God, you guys are all sons and daughters of God, right? You guys have all can tap in to that aspect of your divine nature and make that shift. And this is what this, going all the way back to the very first Guardians video, when they said the cosmic event that's coming is going to create this shift. Well, this shift, like, what is it supposed to look like? And we're trying to explain it. And when you read words like this helps to explain it, because it makes you realize that, hey, we have it inherent in us, that we are all divine, and that we are on par with a Jesus who was probably just 2,000 years ahead of his time. Imagine his position, right? God. Yeah. Imagine landing amongst a society that is like clueless, right? But no wonder they were throwing stones at him. No wonder if they put him on a cross, which, there's people arguing that. But I mean, it's the symbol alone. They tell you, hey, if you're the Son of God and you bring the divine message, this is what happens to you. They put you up on the cross, right?
I also had a thought that I often shared over the last weeks and months with my wife. And that's, we are reading words. And I think the Bible, I'm reading, and I'm every now and then I'm picking it up. I'll open it wherever it opens and I read. And I find that there's so much connection to our current time that you can find in a Bible. This is absolutely an absolutely astonishing set of books and works that
no doubt about it.
That definitely supersedes a time period. It is of a greater interconnected consciousness. There's no doubt about that. But we need to also understand one thing. I want to encourage everyone here, all the viewers, think of the words that we use today and compare to how we used them 20 years ago, 25 years ago, before the advent of social media, internet. Just think of all the internet related terms that we use today. Dude, what a browser, a window, a chat room, these are all like now virtual things on your screen. They used to be physical things in physical reality. That's 20, 25 years, and our language has changed that much. Imagine what has happened in the past 2,000 years. Imagine what has happened from the original languages, from Hebrew, Aramaic, and all the languages that the scripture was taken from, translated over and over, gone to Latin, to Greek, gone through the church, gone through all this to end up in modern day English. And we think that the message is exactly right on point. It cannot be. And so that's why we need our own consciousness to tune into this. And I want to quickly say something to what you said before about the channeling, how it ties into all of this. The truth is, with the timelines and everything, is we've been given one message over and over again when we talked and when we asked questions. And this is personal to our lives. When's this going to happen? When's that going to happen? When we finally achieve this? The message was, it's already done. It's already done. What does that mean? It's already done. Why can't I see it? And in the bigger picture, this means it's all already been created. Hello, look around you. The prime creator already created everything. There's nothing new to be created here. However, what do we align with? What do we vibrationally put ourselves in sync with? Is it this beautiful, flourishing, abundant future? Is it the beautiful, abundant, natural, organic realm? Or is it this artificial, dystopian, low vibrational crap? That is where we come into play. That's our role as co-creators really is, what do we align with in our own individual lives and collectively speaking? And this is what Jesus taught. This is what the Christ consciousness means, is you have the options. There's darkness, there's light, there's hell, there's heaven. It's all happening all around us at all times. What do we sync up with? And that's why I think this conversation that these Guardians videos triggered is so much bigger than what's said in those videos. They
don't even know what they're triggering, honestly. And I think I've noticed that whenever on my last one I said something about there's not going to be anyone come to save us, Jesus isn't going to come and save us, and I think people got upset about that. I noticed a few comments. But what I'm saying with that is tying more into what we were just talking about, that it isn't that Jesus isn't going to come and save us, but it's our putting Jesus on this pedestal. It's the idea of waiting for something outside of us to that's greater than us, that is going to finally make it happen. This is the problem. The fact is, it's us that we've been waiting for, like the saying says. And, we're all have that capacity in us to be like Jesus. So it's dangerous to say, oh, Jesus is going to come back and save us. And so what are you going to do in the meantime?
Yeah,
I guess, right. But
trust the plan, I guess. That was the meantime message.
Right. And here's another thing I found. This fits exactly what you're saying. This is, because it's getting kind of like a little bit hot and religious around here, and it's like I never talk about this much religion ever. This is some straight old quantum physics here, that basically we were talking about Burkhardt before, and essentially what they found through the physicist Hermann Minkowski, who summarized space and time in four-dimensional superspace, which you call like the Minkowski space, right? His colleague Burkhardt basically took it to another level and figured out that time exists only in our consciousness, right? And he says, we perceive time, it's a movement from parallel worlds. Therefore, it's possible to get the insights into the future because everything exists simultaneously within our world. And so from the calculations of Burkhardt it follows there's many possible structures and many parallel worlds with certain fuzziness and consequence of the Heisenberg uncertainty. And what's realized on our way through the parallel worlds depends on our behavior, right? The behavior of a large number of people. That's the decision maker here. So we are, again, here's another form of the message saying, we as a collective, our behavior collectively, a large number of people make a larger collective decision, make a larger impact on the timeline. And, they've got it worked out mathematically. I'm not into math and stuff, but I'm just telling you, the math is out there. So if you don't want to approach it from the Jesus aspect or the religious aspect or the channeling aspect or wherever, the Guardians aspect, the physics aspect is there. And, I've got a quote up on my Facebook from, Schopenhauer. It's like essentially Schrodinger, sorry. Essentially, it's like we have to be aware that we are the ones that need to make our decisions. And it also means that it's what decisions we don't make, so we don't participate. The mainstream out there is thriving only because we give it our energy. The bad narratives out there are existing simply because we believe them. And we give them credibility by our paying attention to them. Simple as that.
If you don't run your mind, if you don't run your heart, somebody else is going to do it. They have the capabilities, they have the current, they have the technology now also to do it. So we have to get in charge again. And that's been the message. And that's what we take out of this whole Guardians narrative, which could end up all crumbling in on itself, which would actually be great. If we do our jobs right, all of us, this whole narrative of events that are going to be horrific, blah, blah, and this crumbling all and collapsing in and of itself, well, isn't that kind of what we're looking for here?
Yep. And I think I'm very, very excited to find, get more clues from them. I guess we're all going to be getting emails, so we're going to have a lot more to talk about.
Yes.
And we're going to scrutinize all of it. And I think any genuine operation, like a Guardians of the Looking Glass and any kind of patriot group, is going to be welcoming any kind of scrutiny. Because, we're not looking to tear something down for the sake of tearing it down. We're looking at getting at the real reality of it. And peeling the layers of the onion to get at the essence of it is the best thing that you can do. So, I'm just looking forward to what's coming down the pipe. And, I look forward to us talking about that when it happens as well.
Yes, same here. There's two things I wanted to mention here. Number one, where was the tying into the Q thing, similarly to Q, and this is just in the beginning, but Q was, to me, oftentimes way off the mark and not relatable in any sense of way. But then again, some astonishing and completely inexplicable things that were connected way before it happened, like a year, 2 years before, and then such a specific series of events that was predicted happened that you go, okay, this can't be just a figment of imagination.
Well, you know what I think it is? AI.
Yes. So yeah,
AI is exactly used for that. They use AI to work out simulations and to predict the future, and they actually pull events into reality through AI's connection with quantum dimensions.
Yeah, exactly. So that was my I was also that it's to me.
And you can also that's why it's never 100%, because there was things that Q brought out which were totally wrong, especially historical perspective things, which we touched on earlier.
Yeah.
And if you have a unique perspective on real history, because we're now learning history's unraveling too. And it's a very treacherous ground to be on, because so many people have anchored their philosophies in false history, but it's becoming unraveled. And I'm going to do what I can to unravel it. But I know a certain amount of things already, and I intend on revealing those things for the sake of breaking down the unnecessary, useless baggage and clearing the way for the new world. And I see things Q brought out which are leaning on historical precepts, which I know didn't exist. So I knew for me then, okay, that can only be one thing. They don't know what they're doing, or they don't really have the real information, or it's AI, because AI is like a child.
The computer is fed. Yeah.
It only draws on what's in the database, right? It'll it's amazing at collating and recalculating and projecting what's already in the database. That's what AI is going to be amazing at. And it can do way better than we can, but it can't create. We are creator beings, and AI isn't a creator being. So whatever we get from messages from the Guardians is going to be something that we as creator beings can, again, work. We can work that information.
At this point, I don't think it is AI that's running the Guardians, simply because of there's not enough meat. There's not enough meat yet in this yet. This is very human-like to me. Also, the mistakes and inconsistencies. Now, Frank, part of what our conversations, the Guardians, all of this triggered us. That you actually sat down and you made this, like you made a commitment on camera. You said, hey, I think I should do a webinar and just put all the information together that I've researched over decades. And now the dots are connecting, because that's the interesting part. You had those pieces. I had those pieces. We all had pieces that were interesting in and of themselves. But now, wow, these pieces in 2022 are like lived experience. And now we go, holy cow, I've heard this 20 years ago. Now this is coming to fruition. So you created a tale of two timelines, a 3-part webinar that is very extensive, and people are loving it. So everybody that goes and watches it and signs up for it is like, holy cow, you just need to see this, such a plethora, such a depth of information. So for those who haven't seen it yet, what can people expect and how can they find it? I mean, we'll put the link down here, but what can they expect?
Well, it's a serious download for sure. It's lengthy, and but it's definitely worth it, because it's a very broad spectrum, multi-aspect look at the whole Looking Glass timeline thing. And what's interesting is going back. I had to go back, more than 20-year-old material to try and bring it up to where the Guardians of the Looking Glass had surfaced. Just starting to look at it, okay, well, let's compare apples with oranges, and once I started to do that, it was incredible, because I found information which was released over 20 years ago, which actually itself was derived from starting in the 1940s onward, when the government and Majestic 12 and these already talking German, these ultra secret societies began to form for the reason of steering society and preventing information from getting out. But they started a dialogue with humans, future humans, from a future timeline. And this timeline that these humans came from is one that we're standing in front. So when you look at the messages that they were bringing out decades ago, they didn't make any sense back then. They only make sense now. It's weird. If you look at the information that they brought out, it's speaking to us exactly like what's happening today. And even the Cassiopeian messages, they were done. I forgot to mention that. Those messages came in 1999. 23 years.
Quite amazing. Quite amazing.
Right. So it shows you that the perspective of time, that's why you can't, what probably they thought 23 years ago was just around the corner. A lot of people thought it was 2012. Didn't happen. Here we are, 2022. But one thing, it's undeniable, things are accelerating. And so piecing it all together like that, I think that, I totally even surprised myself. I even found things that I had recorded for the making of Packing for Mars, which I then now, looking back, I realized that the documents that I was talking about, that were being talked about in that film, which I didn't actually put into the film, were documents that I'm now looking at 10 years later. So it's really incredible loop. And it's an amazing historical document too. From a large perspective, it's a deprogramming program.
It is. And one more perspective here. What if we are a generation that will soon have the ability, or will be charged with the task to go back to our past selves and say, hey, if you want a different path, here's information we can give you. Yes. Now change. Now apply this in 95, apply this in 84, whatever the year might be. Just think about, we're currently it's a crossroads. We're bending time, we're accelerating time, we're perceiving it completely different than we have just a few short years ago. So the possibilities are currently really open and endless. I would encourage you all to go check out A Tale of Two Timelines. If you're coming at it from, as always with Frank, you can go very deep into the information if you're a researcher, but it's also always very entertaining because Frank has a wonderful talent as a filmmaker to put it in a way, shape, and form that is digestible, that is enjoyable, and where you can have a good time while you're doing some serious research and also soul searching. So A Tale of Two Timelines, we'll put the link everywhere in the video description and comments and whatnot.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, brother. Thank you as always for these enlightening conversations. I feel like we're doing our part in this. That's why we show up. And I appreciate your time, your expertise, your wisdom, your knowledge. It's an honor. Thank you.
It's an honor for me too, John. Always a pleasure.
Thank you, brother. Inspired Tribe, my fellow freedom lovers. Thank you for being here. Thank you for allowing us, to share this time with you and to give maybe a few perspectives that are worth exploring. But it's all up to you. It's not us. We don't want you to do what we tell you to do. Trust your own guidance, trust your own intuition, and find a path that feels right for you. We'll be with you again very, very, very soon. I'm sure Frank and I will be back on again soon. And then until then, have a wonderful and inspired rest of your day.